Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the GioMoShow, your home for all Golden Grizzlies basketball. My name is Giovanni Moceri. I am your host, and I know it's been a ton of content coming out, but this is the last week of the Horizon League. The tournament's starting now, and this is what it's all about. Of course, I'm going to be putting out content like this, and you guys can be sure to follow along all the way through. You can subscribe right here on YouTube or on Spotify, wherever you get your audio. You can follow me on Instagram as well at the GioMo Show. And you can follow me on Twitter at GioMoShow, WXOU. Of course, there's going to be a ton of content, especially for the Horizon League tournament. Oakland will be playing on Wednesday against Northern Kentucky as the 4th seed, hosting the Northern Kentucky 7th seed. Ton coming up. Be sure you don't miss out on any of it. But what we will miss out on is coverage of the IU Indy game that was played last Wednesday, just because there's not really much to talk about. IU Indy is a last place team, and Oakland is one of the best in the league, and they shredded them. The end. Now let's get to the Detroit game. Obviously, this is what we're going to be talking about. This is the biggest story, and I've been literally forecasting this and looking forward to it. For 2 months now. I've been talking about this game at the end of the regular season, where at the time when Oakland was fighting with Wright State in second place with the best record, and we kept losing at the same time as them. At that time, I was thinking that this game could potentially come down to another regular season clinching championship. I mean, that was a little bit of wishful thinking at the time, but early in the season, it wasn't that crazy. But either way, the stakes that we did have for this game were still substantial. We're still the biggest that this rivalry has seen in a long time. And if you guys are tired of me saying that, then that means you've been watching along. Thank you very much. But with that game, there were a few things at stake. On the Oakland side, I believe they were the 4th seed at the time. They were tied for second. These were just so crowded in the league, it was hard to keep track of. But Oakland was tied for second with Robert Morris coming into that game. If Oakland were to win, then they would lock up a 2 or a 3 seed. And the reason that was significant is that obviously Oakland already had the home game. And with a 2 or a 3 seed, that means if they win in the first round, they get to avoid that weird single second round game, kind of a play-in game again spot. They would have to play one less game on their path to a championship if they were to win their playoff home game. That is significant because obviously you want the least amount of chances to lose. Duh. But if Oakland were to fall to the 4th seed, which was within the possibilities, then they need an upset to then avoid that game. It is no longer a guarantee. So they might have to play, if they win the home game, in that second round game. For UDM, what was at stake is simply a home game in the tournament. Callahan Hall has not seen playoff action in quite some time, and boy did they earn it by defeating Oakland 95-89. And I got very mixed feelings about this game, kind of because I've been saying it for a little while now, where I have been impressed with what Detroit Mercy has done. The last episode, I even posted a reel of me giving them their due flowers because the program has obviously seen a huge rise, and it's a little bit more fun when less teams suck in the league in general, and it is also more fun when your rival does not suck. Now that I've seen kind of what it feels like to lose to a good Detroit team and not something like Antoine Davis scoring 31 on us in a game that I don't think at the time had very meaningful standing implications. But now that I got to kind of taste the blood in my mouth as an Oakland fan, as an Oakland alum, from being beaten by a good Detroit team with consequences, I kind of feel what the rivalry's about now. And this was the first time I was ever able to feel it. I talked to Neil Rule after the game, and you guys saw on social media. If you're not following, you should. But I got a chance to talk to Neil for a few minutes after the game, and he is knee deep in that rivalry. As an alum, he wants to grind Detroit Mercy to dust every season. He does not want them to win. He feels that a lot more strongly. But for me, I never really got a chance to feel that, but now I kind of understand it a little bit. So seeing Orlando Lovejoy and what he was doing, boasting at the end of the game, I'm not hating on it, okay? That's part of it. But seeing him point at his 313 tattoo on his arm, flexing the Titan name on the front of his jersey, twisting his wrists with the crying emote to the Oakland fans as he makes his way around the blacktop. That stung a little bit. I won't lie, and it's supposed to. And honestly, like it, all things considered, that's more fun. That's the point of it. But it did. I do kind of feel that. I do kind of feel it now. So I got my wish. Okay, yes, Detroit is a good team now. Detroit is actually now the 3rd seed, and we're the 4th seed. So it's okay. I got my wish, and I think now we could say we're on even ground. And now I can treat this thing not as a feel good story for Detroit, but now it's like, okay, now you're at our level. Now it's time for this to feel like a real rivalry. That was something that Coach Montgomery said at the end of the game, and every press conference that he was a part of, every interview that he was a part of, is that it's not a rivalry until you beat your rival. So with that being said, and you guys see in the title of the episode, it is now a rivalry. We're now, and Neil mentioned this as well. I had a chance to talk to so many people at the end of the game. That's kind of why I'm pouring out so much content. But Neil was especially pointing out that regardless of the history of the rivalry, anytime one team wins, then it's everything. Then all the history is cast aside. Then, I think Oakland, I'm trying to remember the stat. I think it was like 23 of 26 or 22 of 26 in, winning those matchups since entering the Horizon League. Oakland has dominated the series. But because we didn't lose, or because we didn't win that day, then all of that is erased. I mean, and I agree with Neil. That is the point. That's what it is about. That's how it should be treated. It should be recency bias. It should be insanity. It should be like illogical almost. Just wish it was a bit on our side. Anyway, we'll kind of give a breakdown of the game so far, and I'll get more into the senior day side of the festivities. Later on, we'll get into the Horizon League tournament and our matchup with Northern Kentucky. But I want to go through the game like in and of itself. So this one, I felt it was very similar to their loss at home against Green Bay, because it did kind of have similar it had similar stakes to it, where you were trying to fight for position in the Horizon League. I think at the time Green Bay was tied with us at second, or at least right around there, and we were still trying to fight for that second spot. And obviously this game had similar seeding implications as well, but it felt similar in the fact that we started slow again. But it wasn't necessarily starting slow on offense. It was starting slow on defense, which is what Smitty told me when I got a chance to talk to him after the game. Was that, and it kind of, I wouldn't even say it's a bad start on defense. I mean, it was just defense that wasn't there all game long. I mean, they scored 95 on us, but that kind of slow start on defense and Oakland not having like an equally perfect start on offense, then we get into another situation where we're behind the whole time. Detroit Mercy led for 32, almost 33 minutes of this game. I mean, they were in the driver's seats, and for a lot of the time, they had two hands on the wheel. But it wasn't totally one-sided, and it was by no means a blowout, because in the first half, UDM, they got up by as much as 14, and then you're like, oh, crap. I tweeted out, Oakland is free-falling because of that run that they had to get up to a 14-point lead. Luckily, Oakland would kind of calm things down a little bit with a 7-0 run right before the end of the first half, but it was still 49-42 at halftime. Oakland was down by 7. They were able to cut that largest lead in half going into halftime. And part of the reason why Detroit was able to get out to such a strong start, or finish the first half strongly, is because of TJ Nadeau, specifically TJ Nadeau. And throughout the whole game, Detroit Mercy was very top heavy in terms of the scoring, and TJ Nadeau was a huge part of that. In the first half alone, after UDM as a team started 1 for 6 from 3, I mean, they didn't shoot well to begin with. Neither did Oakland. We were 1 of 4 from deep to begin with. However, by the end of the first half, TJ Nadeau would have 21 points and was 4 of 6 from the 3-point line and was 5 of 6 from the free throw line. He tore up the first half. And it started with corner threes, obviously the Oakland zone weakness. Took advantage of that corner three, had the hot hand, and they were really feeding it to him once he made his first couple of threes. Then they're really starting to feed him. and it was enough to help them help Detroit get out to a strong start. Now, that wouldn't necessarily continue for Nadu in the second half. I think he would only have 7 more points. In that second half, he would end the game with 28. I'm not trying to downplay that. I know he finished the game with 28. However, he was not the top Detroit scorer in this game. But let's continue here. Baru also did have a strong half. I will give him props for that, because his job was a lot harder in this game than it was when they played on the road against Detroit Mercy, because London Maiden, another one of their big guys, was in attendance at this game, kind of giving them a good rotation between Callum Bay and Maiden, and Legend Jeter as some of the guys in the front court that were able to defend Oakland's front court. Because Maiden is a big dude. You can see just visually by looking at him. He's a big, strong, hard to move, and Baru isn't necessarily like the heaviest of big men. So there were a lot of times where he was trying to push up against them, and London Maiden was not giving up any ground. So Baru's job got a lot harder in this game because of that. But despite that, in the first half, he was still 7 of 8 from the floor for 16 points. Super strong first half. So it wasn't something that was necessarily completely shutting him down. He was making some very difficult shots, though. Like that was the thing. The shots that he was making were pretty difficult ones, but still able to get it done. And Baru was pretty good from 3 as well. He was 2 of 3 from deep by the end of the game. And it's rare that we've seen, like, we'll see Baru go 1 of 3. But a 2 of 3 in such a highly efficient game like that's great to see from Baru. That's kind of what we thought his skill set was going to be at the beginning of the season, when the first points of the season were scored by Baru shooting the corner 3. But regardless, Baru, strong start in the first half. Nadu, strong start in the first half. But then the second half comes, and Orlando Lovejoy arrived. He was literally perfect in the second half. Now, he was not asleep in the first half. He had 11 points in the first, but that second half, he played all 20 minutes, and he made all 9 of his shots. Some of those, you want to talk about difficult shots, some of the stuff he was making was very impressive. 9 for 9 from the field, 18 points. And funny enough, the only shot that he missed was one that he rarely misses, because he's a top free throw shooter in the Horizon League. He was 0 of 1 from the line today, or at least in the first half. He would end up being 3 of 4 for the game. But, in the second half, he missed his only free throw. But still, he was worthy of the title of Mr. 313. He was dominant in this game. And I have to give it up for him. But it's just, when you see somebody like that come into your place and literally not miss in the second half in a 95-point game, it was extremely impressive. Him and TJ Nadu would combine for over half of the points that the team scored, because Lovejoy would end with 29 points. 29 points on 13 of 16 from the floor, 3 of 4 from the line, a rebound, 4 assists, and no turnovers. He was perfect in handling the ball, 2 steals as well, and some of those steals leading to his own baskets. He was very, very impressive in this game. Now, we'll shift it over to the Oakland side, because that second half wasn't necessarily us lying down and letting Orlando Lovejoy do his thing. Oakland did get the lead back in this game. They would go on a huge run. I believe it was like 11-0 run, a 12-2, 13-3 type of run, to where Oakland actually got a 3-point lead when it was 66-63 with 11 minutes left to go in the game. But the lead was only 3. It would only get as big as 3. And that's also what teleported my mind to the post-game press conference of the Green Bay game, when I asked the guys about why is it so difficult to get the lead and keep the lead after making a run, because they can make the run and make it close, but then, something seems to happen. Brody described it as that they let their foot off the gas, and once they get back into the game, the urgency of making the run is no longer there. And he pointed out specifically that, yeah, they got a 2 and 3 point lead against Green Bay, but they never got that 5 or 6 point lead, that multi-possession lead that can really make it easier to hold on to. Then in this game, they only get that 2-3 point lead that would right away fleet away, because during that time when they were making their run, then Detroit's not scoring. They're on like a 3-minute scoring drought or whatever they were during that stretch. And then once they have the chance and recover themselves and to make their own run, all they got to do is make one basket and they got the lead back. Like, that's how these things work. Oakland runs to make it close, and then all Mercy has to do is get one basket, and then they're back in it. So it makes it doubly difficult to make that work. But during that run, that place was rocking. That place was nuts because you had a fantastic game from Brett White. You had Brody make 2 threes in a row that just lit the place up. There was the only 2 threes that he made during the game. He was 2 of 8 from deep. Brett White was 5 of 9. Like, he produced as much as TJ Nadeau did from 3. Took him a couple more attempts, but both of them got 5 threes by the end of the game. Brett White would finish with 17, and obviously Nadeau had a little bit more action from the free throw line, and he would finish with 28. But Oakland, as well as Detroit Mercy, like, everybody was shooting really well. The defense wasn't as strong in this game, and obviously the high-scoring affair that we had proves that. But those Oakland guys were making their shots during that run, and it really lit the place up. But all it took was a little bit from Mercy to calm that down, get back into things, and come away with the win. What stands out to me in the stat sheet, now we're going to go over the box score here. What stands out to me in the stat sheet, other than what I have mentioned already, is Oakland with 13 turnovers and Detroit Mercy with only 6. And now that comes from Lovejoy not turning it over. That comes from Nadeau and Spratt only turning it over once. It would be Legend Jeter, who obviously isn't the main ball handler. He would turn it over 3 times. And then one more from Nate Johnson in the 9 minutes that he played. But only 6 turnovers, limiting Oakland's powerful offense. You're not giving them extra opportunities. You're in a plus in that situation because you forced 13 turnovers for Oakland. So you're not giving them those extra possessions that Oakland would have. It probably would have made the difference in the game. So that's something that stands out to me. But Oakland shot incredibly well overall during the game. At one point during the second half, they were 61% from the floor. They would finish 54%. And from deep, they were 10 of 24, a 42% three-point shooting game. We don't typically see that from Oakland, in wins. Weirdly enough. I mean, this is just a feeling. I haven't gone back and checked, but for whatever reason, I feel like whenever we shoot well from 3, we lose. Like, it's usually like we lose despite shooting well from 3. And if that's the case, then this is another one of those kinds of games. But at the end of it, Detroit Mercy earned it. I have to give it up to them. I can't. There was no malpractice from the refs. There was no injury to it. There was really no excuse that I, as an Oakland fan and Oakland, media member. I mean, I shouldn't take sides as a media member, but for me on the Oakland side of things, there's really no excuse for how the game went. Right? Scored and scored and scored and scored, and their players that they trust and who have been carrying them all season, meaning Lovejoy and Nadeau, tore the game open. And Oakland let them. Their defense was not strong enough to hold them down, and it would end up earning them, UDM, a 3rd seed, and they're hosting Milwaukee. What that earned Oakland is a 4th seed, and they're hosting Northern Kentucky. And what the record books will show forever is that 29-point game and 28-point game from those 2 Titans in the arena with a screenshot of them at a higher seed than Oakland. That's what's going to stand. Now over to the senior day side of things. Obviously, senior day is always really special. And it's something that I especially look forward to because that was my 4th senior day at the arena because it was Jalen Moore's last year. Then it was the Kentucky team. Then it was the Baru and Mukeba team. And then now it is this year's Baru Robinson IG team. So this is my 4th senior day at the arena. And obviously the senior day that consisted of Trey Townsend and Blake Lamman and Chris. I don't think Chris Conway had one because I think he still had 1 year left, but I'm just thinking back and I'm getting really nostalgic about it, especially just because the tradition of everybody staying on the court until the last person leaves is something that's special to me because obviously I get some interviews with it. I get pictures taken, and it's something where like last year when Baru remembered me, like I mean Baru like knew who I was, and he stopped me short as I was introducing myself. And it's like you get stuff like that where, I mean, like at least with my schedule, I don't get to interview as many players as I would like to, as many coaches as I would like to during the season, just because of the way my schedule is right now. I'm working full time while doing all this stuff. So to get that chance on the court is really special. And for you guys who have followed on social media, you can see that I got one with, I got my yearly interview with Smitty. I got one with Brody Robinson, and I got a chit chat with Neil Rule. Obviously, and then afterwards, later on, I got a chance to talk to Jennifer Hammond of Fox 2, one of the best sports reporter, obviously, in the area. It's just straight up. She's magnificent. But all of that and the beautiful speeches and Baru having his family send him a video, and you're seeing Baru, who stood there for 3 years, sobbing at the middle of the court. I mean, like that really tugged at your heartstrings. And then what happened once, like maybe 10, 15 minutes into everyone gathering and taking pictures, was this giant flash of light and beeping. The fire alarm goes off. Now, I didn't see a fire. That doesn't necessarily mean that it shouldn't have been turned on. But a screeching halt comes to this very special senior day celebration, and everybody has to evacuate the building. And it took a little while for people to do it. It took a while for me to do it. I kind of took my time, packed my stuff up, and kind of slowly got my way out of there. I was trying to hear and listen to like what's going on. I mean, like, because it's such strange timing, and there didn't seem to be any urgency. Just kind of confusion. What I then learned, from those in the Oakland staff, is that most likely it was a Detroit fan who pulled it as a prank. That the Oakland staff members have told me that. I won't say specifics, but I have been informed that is the working theory over there at the athletic department. And if that's the case, if a Detroit fan pulls a fire alarm after they beat us on senior day to ruin the senior day celebration, that's some cold stuff. That's cold. That's ice cold. And that puts some serious juice into the lore of this rivalry. That is some bulletin board material if I've ever seen any. That is ice cold. And you can, if you're on YouTube, you can see the smile on my face, because as bad as that is, that's kind of hilarious. And what also is putting a smile on my face is I know that's going to be remembered for next year. If that ends up being true, or if that story just ends up going around to next year's locker room, I can only imagine Campy's pregame speech and prep going into their first game against Detroit Mercy, and then the next one they'll have next year. And if they ever meet in the Horizon League tournament this year, then the smile on my face is because I know that they're going to want to rip them to shreds. I know that they're going to want to beat them down and grind them to dust. If that's the case, and Mercy's going to have to watch out, in a sports sense, in a sports capacity, of course. But man, that's some cold stuff. And we'll see the repercussions of that on the basketball court in due time. But otherwise, that celebration is still something that's cherished. Campy uses it as a recruiting tool, honestly. And I picked that up because when I talked to Brody, he mentioned to me that this day is what Campy was talking about when he was being recruited, being celebrated on senior day, and how special it is, and the legacy that he's going to leave on Oakland when that senior day comes, and how special that is. That's part of the reason why he came to Oakland. But what really stood out, or what also stood out, really, also just because I forgot, I wanted to cap off the senior day thing with the fire alarm stuff, but during Campy's speech for Brody, he called him, quote, the ultimate point guard, and said that the season that Brody has had this year is as good or better than some of the great Oakland point guards that we've seen in this program, namely of the Kay Felder variety, namely of the Jalen Moore variety, etc., so on and so forth. Campy says that the season that he's had is comparable to all those guys. I don't know what kind of higher praise you can get from him about his most prized position. And Brody really, like, that meant a lot to him, is what he told me, being called that and just knowing the history of this program. That is some high praise. And, for really only seeing Jalen Moore's kind of last year where, he didn't necessarily have, ankle injury and that kind of stuff. So I didn't necessarily see his peak performance where he led the nation in assists and all that kind of stuff. But I would have to agree with Campy on saying that is some of the best point guard play that I've seen, that he has seen at Oakland. It's definitely the best that I've seen. Ironically, the years that I start covering Oakland full time is when there's not necessarily a point guard. We had Rocket Watts kind of as our point guard, and a mix of Tone Hunter and a mix of Jalen Johnson over with his brother. Yeah, and that's not necessarily the best point guard play that Oakland has had in a while, but Brody Robinson has definitely reversed that and got Oakland back to kind of their point guard focused identity, because he's a monster. And the Horizon Roundtable calls him a first team All Horizon League player. Now we'll see what the official Horizon League awards come out to be, but if very few people cover the league like the Horizon Roundtable does, so I gotta put some stake and some weight onto their postseason award considerations. Brody Robinson, first team All Horizon Roundtable, you could say. Now, Orlando Lovejoy will also mention is second team All League, and Baru and IG are third team. So just kind of relating it back to the game here. There's some serious talent on that floor. So all that to wrap up the game itself and the senior day itself. And also that fire alarm is the reason why I had to talk to Jennifer Hammond on Zoom earlier today, is because we were supposed to do it at the arena on the floor, but obviously we got kicked out. Luckily, she was nice enough to follow through and say, hey, can we pick this up tomorrow? And absolutely. She's awesome. God, I love Jennifer. She's the best. So where does that leave us? That leaves us now at the 4 seed. That leaves us now to face Northern Kentucky for the third time this season. And Oakland's going to need some luck to get out of that second round game, as I mentioned before. One of the ways that can happen, and one of the ways that we could see Detroit Mercy again, is if the game of the second seed and the, what would it be, the 9th seed? Yeah, the second seed and the 9th seed, between Robert Morris and Youngstown State, a rematch of last year's Horizon League championship game. I believe it was a championship game. If Youngstown State can get their revenge against Robert Morris and knock them out of the tournament, then that means if Oakland and Detroit win, they would be the second and third best seeds remaining and jump right into the semifinals, and then we would see this matchup again in the semifinals of the Horizon League tournament in Indianapolis. How sweet would that be? I think that would be just the coolest. I think that would be the coldest. I think that would be awesome if that could happen and Oakland could get a chance to get our revenge and kind of re-grip on the rivalry. Get both hands back on the wheel on that thing, because now, like I said before, I'm done with the I'm happy for them. I'm happy the rivalry is back. Now it's here, and the job there, that job is done. Now it is just mano a mano. We split this season. If we see you again, we're gonna want to grind you to dust. Now I'm all in. Now I'm bought in. As far as that rivalry is concerned, so I want a third matchup. I want to see them again. I want to see them at the Horizon League tournament that I am most likely going to be in attendance for. If not as a media member, then damn it, I'm going to buy a ticket because I already got the days off of work. I'm going. So either way, that's something I would like to see. But if it means Oakland's got to play, 4 games or what would it be, the first round, second round, semi. If we got to play 4 games to win the championship, then that's what it's going to have to be. And Northern Kentucky is that first opponent that gets in that way. None of this happens. None of this fantasy rematch happens without beating Northern Kentucky. And from the games that we've played, we've swept them this season, and obviously it's notoriously hard to beat a team 3 times in the same season, even though it kind of happens just as much as it doesn't, I feel like. But the first time around, it was an Oakland win on the road very early in the season. When did we play them? We played them on December 17th. Whoa. And we were able to beat them, although what comes to mind immediately, and I know Donovan O'Day has been like a freaking force of nature for Northern Kentucky, but I remember LJ Wells feasting in the first half of their first matchup in Northern Kentucky. He was not there at the home game that we would end up winning again in the arena. So I don't necessarily want to go off of, how the game in December went. Obviously, things are much different now than they were back then, and I want to pull up some of the box scores for that. But yeah, LJ Wells in the first half, or in the first matchup, 18, 9, and 6 with 18 of 15 from the floor, 4 offensive rebounds. Like, he was everywhere. Most of that was taken from the first half. And then you go into the second matchup that we had with them this season, and we have confirmation he did not play. Donovan O'Day had a really, really hard shooting night. He was 0 of 7. Dozer was 2 of 7. Hale Robinson was 4 of 11, but like overall, Oakland was able to hold them to 22.5% from 3. We're one of the best 3-point defending teams in the league by percentage, but I got to imagine it's hard to make them do that again. Donovan O'Day, I don't think you're going to hold them to 0 of 7 from deep. I don't think you're going to hold all these guys to such low shooting numbers. And in that last matchup, dominated on we dominated on the glass. Holy crap, there's a lot of rebounds in this game. 49 rebounds to 40. Oakland advantage on the rebounding side. Wow, there was a ton. There's just a lot. I think there's just a lot of missed shots in this one. Wow. I haven't taken a look at this box score in a while. Brody had a great game in that matchup, even though he was just 2 of 7. He got to the line a lot, 21 points. Mike Hogue had a big game, 18 and 12. And Brett White made a few threes as well, would end up for 11 points and 8 rebounds. So, I mean, just kind of bringing back some memories, refreshing everybody as to who performed and how against Northern Kentucky, just to kind of preview into this game. And honestly, I haven't followed Northern Kentucky a ton this season in specifically, but they're an experienced program, and if their defense, which is designed, it's a zone, but it is a lot more aggressive in going for passes and steals. If Oakland is going to be forced to turnover like we did against Detroit Mercy or even worse, that's going to be tough. If Oakland has a slow start on offense and or defense, it's going to be tough. So, I mean, I am by no means guaranteeing Oakland is even going to get to Indianapolis. It is by no means a guarantee that Oakland makes it out alive in this round. We've seen Northern Kentucky kick us out of the tournament at home before. I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago it's happened. So it's a tough assignment, but honestly, even if we faced Milwaukee for a third time, and you get into the whole Milwaukee history of it, even if we were a matchup with Youngstown State, and could they be the team that knocks off, could they knock off Robert Morris in the second round? All the talent that they have, does it kind of come together enough at the very last second of the season just to flip off whoever they're playing and then maybe lose the next round? Like, could they be a spoiler? So I say that all to say, Purdue Fort Wayne especially, they're a dangerous team. All that to say is that I don't think Oakland really had a good option of an opponent in this first round of the tournament. I think it's going to be tough no matter what happens, especially just because of the atmosphere of the Horizon League tournament, especially just because it's do or die, and especially just because the intensity is much higher. And Oakland hasn't had a great stretch lately. 4-game losing streak, you win 2 and you lose your last. That's not a good stretch in the month of February going into into March tournaments. So it's going to be tough. Obviously, I think Oakland can do it. I'm not saying they are incapable of it. But it's going to have to look better than it did against Detroit. And I'm rambling on, and it's been a long day, and I've been covering this game a lot. So, with that, I'll leave you with this. This has been an incredible season for Oakland, honestly. I really had a ton of fun covering this regular season, and I'm ready for March. I'm ready to see the final chapter of this story that we've been covering here on the GioMoShow since pretty much September, or pretty much since before the season, since the game at Michigan, since the game at Purdue, since the game at Houston. 3 number 1 teams covering the team all the way through. Now is the time for the last chapter to be written, and let's see what all of this builds up to. Let's see what this team can do, because we've been seeing it for months, preparing for it. Now it's time to pay the check. Let's see what we got. I'm excited for it. Hope you guys are too. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's been a longer episode, especially one for just covering a single game. But I appreciate you guys following along all the way throughout the regular season. And if you have not already, be sure to subscribe. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe on all the audio platforms as well as YouTube. Be sure to follow us on Instagram as well at the GioMo Show. Follow me on Twitter at GioMoSherry, WXOU. I am just getting started with my Horizon League tournament coverage. Be sure to not miss one bit of it. My name is Giovanni Moceri, and we'll see you soon right here on the GioMoShow.